At the end of the 18th century, a wonderful garden with waterfalls and fountains, lakes and unprecedented foreign flora appeared on the right bank of Ukraine in the middle of the silent steppe wasteland. In all its manifestations, this English landscape park was also called an island of ancient culture and a European oasis on the territory of Ukraine, moreover within the city limits of Uman. Today, the Sofiyivka National Arboretum is also considered an exquisite and fantastic model of park landscaping art. Sofiyivka is a wonderful creation of nature and man. It charms people with its beauty any time of the year, but in autumn it is very mysterious. At this time, the park stands out for its pensive and peaceful attributes. Passions subside and everything is covered with some kind of melancholy. The golden crimson outfit of the trees, the rustling of falling leaves underfoot, and the silent peace of the ponds inspire us to think about the past of this amazing natural place. Suddenly, a luxurious carriage drawn by a pair of horses appeared on a shady alley. Following the etiquette, Count Pototsky and his charming wife Sofia came out of the carriage. The crowned couple quietly and majestically walked along the park alley and stopped on the bridge, peering into the distance of the Parisian Champs-Élysées. In 1795, walking with his future wife around Uman, Count Pototsky decided to create a park that would remind Sofia of mountains and forests, lakes and swift waterfalls of Greece. The hills covered with numerous granite boulders along the Kamenka River turned out to be quite suitable. In such a relief, in the northern part of the city, lakes, cascades of waterfalls, ponds and fountains perfectly fit into the picturesque landscape of this park. Two gods prevailed in the garden, water without which there is no life, and granite that gives one peace of mind. Ludwig Metzel solved the problem of potable water supplied to hydraulic structures and ponds. 4 ponds were dug along the Kamenka riverbed, which became the main reservoir of the park's water resources. The lower, upper, and red lakes are located on the park's territory, while the Wojtovski Lake is located outside the park in the neighboring village of Rodnikivka. The Kamenka River gives life to all the hydraulic structures in this park. The architect of the park, Ludwig Metzel, built ponds, cutting down boulders in granite. The lower lake is a little more than a hectare in area, while the upper one is almost 9 hectares. Outside the park, there is a huge reservoir of 17 hectares of the Krasnostavsky Pond. From there, water is supplied to the upper pond, and then in 4 directions from the upper pond, water flows throughout the garden in the underground kingdom of Ida to the Semistruika fountain, to the fountain decorated with a pheasant, and here to a large waterfall. The hydraulic system is very complex, with various interesting devices. The water purification system was well arranged and special filters were installed. Sofiyivka's unique hydraulic system works without pumps. Fountains are driven by water pressure in their upper ponds, without additional pumping. Even the eruption of the snake fountain with a 16-meter jet occurs without the function of any mechanics. Underground from the upper pond is a cast iron pipe of 300 meters. It connects 2 vessels located at different levels, which are the main factors in the principle of the action of the snake fountain. No motor, no swap. A very common law of communicating vessels located at different levels was laid down based on the principle of the action of the fountain. Initially, the fountain was decorated with a pile of stones. Over time, a sculptural composition appeared in the form of a huge snake, complete with sculptures, architectural forms, and water objects in the style of Sofiyivka. These compositions are replete with profound meaning. The marble statue of the bather, hidden behind the veil of water in the grotto of Venus, reminds one of how vulnerable and fragile love can be. It either appears or becomes invisible behind the streaming water. One of the most remarkable objects of the park is the Grotto of Venus. It is so attractive and incredibly beautiful. Behind the Grotto of Venus, there was once a park bench in the form of a semicircle, and behind the bench there is a special valve that allows for regulating the flow of water. If there was a desire to take a rest, one had to sit down on a bench, and then Venus and a person sitting on the bench are invisible. Such is the secret of this grotto. The Grotto of Venus, carved into the dam of the upper lake, resembles an ancient temple, decorated with stained glass windows from above. Columns were cut from the nearest Calypso grotto. The noise and the pacifying look of the falling streams of water, the coolness and comfort under the shade of the trees cause an obvious desire to linger. The charm of the Champs-Élysées is unchanged.
За мной как раз Елисейские поля.
Behind me, we can see the Champs-Élysées, on which tables were laid. 4 times a day, oysters were served on crushed ice, and guests gathered together to admire the beauty of the garden. Oysters were brought from the Mediterranean Sea to Odessa, and from there, in ice coolers to the park.
По морю до Одессы, дальше везли во льду сюда.
The loudest part of the park is the Amsterdam Gateway. It was necessary to regulate the level of the underground river and the water supply throughout the park. Here at the gateway, everyone can go on a trip along the waters of the underground Acheron River. From Greek mythology, it is known that the gloomy carrier Charon transported the souls of the dead to the underworld of Hades along this river.
Согласно древнегреческой мифологии,
according to ancient Greek mythology, all that begins eventually ends. The world of the living ends, and the traveler then enters the realm of a gloomy twilight in the underworld of Hades. And there's no place for the day there, so you should simply forget about the sunlight.
и дню здесь места нет. Неужели должен ты забыть про солнце, свет?
It is difficult to imagine how much it took the architects of the park to dig a canal that is 1/4 of a kilometer long and 3 meters wide. It is illuminated by daylight that enters through the hatches. There are 4 of them, just like the 4 seasons.
Здесь есть аллегория времен.
There is an allegory of the seasons. 4 hatches, 4 seasons. We crossed the spring, then came to the summer, followed by autumn and winter.
За ним следует осень и зима. Подземное царство Аида.
This is the underworld of Hades, and for a day there is no place here. You should simply forget about the sunlight. Will you be alive in the kingdom of the dead buried in silence when Charon takes your soul? But the underworld will soon come to an end, and we will sail to Ecumene, and we will once again see the sunlight and the sky.
Увидим солнце, небо.
Leaving the kingdom of darkness, the traveler continues sailing along the expanse of the dead lake. The pond received such a name due to its cozy and quiet location. There is always calm, and time seems to stand still here. The dead lake doesn't have any symbolism. Beautiful and calm along the coast, twined with wild grapes and planted with ancient ash and maple trees, it is a great place for a rest. Like all reservoirs here, the dead lake is a part of the whole hydraulic system. Its waters rush along the stone steps and fall from the height of the Great Falls into the Styx River. A hatch is installed on the right bank of the lake, through which water is supplied through a special channel to the Semistruka fountain. 7 thin jets hanging from pendants of crystal drops. This part of the park was presented as a stage of an ancient theater, and along the slope appears the parterre amphitheater. Accurately mowed lawns, the edges of which adorn a variety of polyanthus roses, are made in a standard or French style. In the times when the Potocki family lived here, there was a main entrance to the park. In addition to greatness and love, the atmosphere of the park is permeated with subtle sadness. Of course, there were dramatic periods in the history of Count Potocki and Sofia. The small waterfall Three Tears is divided into three parts. Sparkling under the rays of the sun, it mourns those who have gone to another world. 3 of the 8 Potocki children died at a young age. The landscape of the park is used in such a way that each subsequent pond opens its gaze unexpectedly due to a turn, behind a huge rock or from a towering platform. So skirting the granite outcrops of Ithaca Island, we appear at the shore of the huge lower pond. Here it is associated with the Ionian Sea. Its base is cut down in granite rock, and water flows from the upper pond through a network of lakes and canals. At the same time, the pond lives the full life of a natural reservoir in which fish can be seen and birds are constantly feeding. Exotic migratory birds find shelter on the water surface along the banks of the ponds. Every year mallards nest here, take their babies, feed them and prepare for the migratory flight in the autumn. The birds won't nest where they do not feel protected. Even despite the popularity of the park, which is visited by thousands of tourists, mother birds find a place where to build a nest for their offspring. And every year there are luxurious broods.
И каждый год мы можем видеть роскошные выводки.
Birds nest even in the absence of dense thickets of cattail or reed. Between the stones on the shore, in the crevices, they make nests and hatch offspring. And a few days later, the offspring are already descending into the water. It is much more difficult for swan families to continue their genus. We have a small house built specially for swans. They try to breed, but as you know, a swan is a very nervous bird, sensitive to the curiosity of tourists.
Публика любопытная.
They sometimes try to look into the house when the mother swan sits on the nest. After a few hours, the eggs are already cooling and the offspring will no longer hatch. But there are years when swans are eventually hatched. In addition to the usual mute swords and whoopers with snow-white plumage, an amazing Australian black swan joined the local inhabitants. Proud, graceful bird won't enter into a dispute over a treat. It stays far away from its white-winged brethren. The Canada goose, the Central Asian mountain goose, and the white American goose settled on these ponds as strangers. They glisteningly glide along the water surface of the mirror ponds, and the majestic crystal jingle of the waterfalls drowns out the cacophony of the birds. The upstage artist forest birds, with thin trills, continue the dissonant serenade of Sofiyivka, which is known as the Park of Eternal Love.